Hello, welcome to our lecture on cellular respiration. And we will be creating a graphic organizer, so please have your notebooks out. We're going to start by Miss Watson's favorite, reading the pictures. I want you to compare and contrast a plant cell, which is on the left, to an animal cell, which is on the right. How are they the same? How are they different? You don't have to write this down, just think about it in your head. Then ask yourself, based on the similarities and the differences, what processes can both plants and animal cells do? And what process can only plants do? And you want to write this question down in your notebook. Well, the answer that you also want to write in your notebook is that both plant and animal cells have mitochondria. So both can do cellular respiration. Remember, cellular respiration is the site or takes place in the mitochondria. Plant cells have chloroplasts, so only plant cells can do photosynthesis. Animal cells can't do photosynthesis. Take a second, write that down. Now I'm going to have you look at this fungal cell. This is a drawing of a fungal cell, which is a cell inside of a fungus, like a mushroom. And answer the question, what process can a fungal cell do? And how do you know? Now, one more read the picture before we actually start the lesson. What are the 3 stages of cellular respiration? So read this picture to the left, which actually encapsulates cellular respiration, and take a guess. What are the 3 stages of cellular respiration? Take a second and copy this graphic organizer into your notes. Make sure you take up the whole page so that you have plenty of space to compare and contrast glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and electron transport across 4 criteria. So we're going to look at the location, the energy, the matter, and a new one for you, the oxygen needs. Oxygen becomes very important in cellular respiration, as you know, because you are currently breathing. So our first column, glycolysis. Glycolysis is the first stage of cellular respiration. Glycolysis happens outside of the mitochondria in the cytoplasm of the cell. So glycolysis doesn't actually happen in the mitochondria. So when we say where cellular respiration takes place, we often say cellular respiration takes place in and around the mitochondria because glycolysis, the first stage of cellular respiration, happens outside of the mitochondria in the cytoplasm of the cell. In terms of energy, a very small amount of energy is captured from broken bonds during glycolysis. And there is a net gain of about 2 ATP molecules. So in this process, your body is able to get 2 ATP molecules. It's energy, but it's a very small amount of energy. In terms of matter transformation, glucose, remember glucose is that molecule that stored chemical energy and matter. The glucose is broken down into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. So you just basically snap the glucose in half. It's more complicated than that, but you can think of it as breaking this glucose that has 6 carbons down into 2 molecules that have 3 carbons each. And then oxygen needs. Glycolysis is said to be anaerobic. And guys, that is a vocabulary word, anaerobic. It means without oxygen. And literally, for my word nerds out there, an means no, arrow is Greek for life, and then bic is a form of the word bios, which is life. So they think of oxygen as like air for life. So anaerobic, no air for life. And that means that this stage happens without oxygen. Remember, you could only last about 3 minutes without oxygen, but this stage in our cells actually takes place without oxygen, which for my honors kids will come into play when we do our fermentation lesson on Friday. The second stage of cellular respiration is the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle happens inside of the mitochondria. So glycolysis happened outside, the Krebs cycle happens inside of the mitochondria. And in the Krebs cycle, a small amount of energy is captured from broken bonds to produce about 2 ATP molecules. So the Krebs cycle happens and we get about 2 ATP molecules out of it. And that's a net gain. There's a lot of little processes that happen inside of the Krebs cycle. And overall, all of the things I'm talking about right now are overall. There are 2 ATP molecules gained. In terms of matter, pyruvic acid is broken down into carbon dioxide and hydrogen plus. So those little hydrogen ions, they'll come into play in the next cycle, and carbon dioxide come from pyruvic acid. And if you remember, the pyruvic acid are those 3 carbon groups that we broke down from glucose. And then oxygen. The Krebs cycle is said to be aerobic. Aero meaning air, and bic coming from bios, meaning life. So for my word nerds, aerobic is Greek for literally life air, meaning that it needs oxygen to move forward. So the Krebs cycle doesn't actually need oxygen to function, but it needs the next stage to function. It won't function if the next stage doesn't function, and the next stage needs oxygen. So we say that the Krebs cycle is aerobic. And that is a vocabulary word. On the test, you will need to know the difference between anaerobic without oxygen and aerobic with oxygen. Finally, we have our electron transport, which is the last stage of cellular respiration. Electron transport happens in the mitochondria. So inside of the mitochondria, so we have glycolysis that happens outside of the mitochondria, the Krebs cycle that happens in the mitochondria, and electron transport, or the electron transport chain, which happens inside of the mitochondria as well. This is the big money stage of cellular respiration. In terms of energy, a large amount of energy is captured from a series of very complex steps involving electrons. And this stage produces 32 ATP molecules. So again, electron transport ultimately nets 32 ATP molecules. So glycolysis gave us about 2, Krebs cycle gave us about 2, and electron transport gives us 32 ATP molecules. In terms of matter transformation, oxygen molecules, and remember those H pluses from the Krebs cycle. So this is our oxygen that we breathe in, oxygen gas, O2, and those H pluses come together to form water, one of the byproducts of cellular respiration. So the Krebs cycle gave us carbon dioxide, which is one of the byproducts of cellular respiration, and electron transport gives us water. So now we have the 2 byproducts of cellular respiration. Finally, oxygen, electron transport is aerobic. Obviously, we need oxygen in the matter section to be able to do electron transport. So it is aerobic, that's Greek for life air. So it happens with oxygen. If you don't have oxygen, you can't do electron transport. If you can't do electron transport, you can't do the Krebs cycle. So both the Krebs cycle and electron transport are said to be aerobic. Let's go ahead and do a quick check for understanding. Which stage of cellular respiration is anaerobic? Which stage of cellular respiration yields the most ATP? Which stage of cellular respiration yields the most ATP? Which stage of cellular respiration yields carbon dioxide as a byproduct? And there is a typo on there. Sorry about that. Listen to my words. Which stage of cellular respiration yields carbon dioxide as a byproduct? Same typo. Which stage of cellular respiration yields H2O, water, as a byproduct? Which stage of cellular respiration yields water as a byproduct? And then finally, which stage of cellular respiration breaks down glucose? Which stage of cellular respiration breaks down glucose? Hopefully, excuse me. Hopefully you guys did well. And that ends our Ed puzzle.